Is there anything better than doing an ask on a beautiful San Diego afternoon while I'm trying to get everything set up for you here? Happy Saturday. I am so pleased to be with you all, and it is such a big deal that I can be. I'm trying to get this together so that I can actually read a couple things as well. This is, among other things, the mid April ask. And I am excited to be doing it as I am excited to do all asks these days. The ask is something that I am proud to be able to do. It's something that is necessary for the continued health and longevity of Lace on Race in adherence to and in honor of our Western Star. And so rather than feeling, oh my gosh, I wish I didn't have to do this, I am doing my best to think of it differently, to think of it as something that not only am I tasked with doing as your chief cook and bottle washer, but also something that I want to do. Sometimes that is a very strong word, want to do. But it's necessary. It's necessary. And for reasons that I'm going to go into. But before I actually go into the ask, or basically I'm going to read the written ask that I gave you a couple of days ago, I think it's important to say a few things about what it is that we do, particularly to the large number of new people that we have gained over the last 7 days or so. We are committed to, in addition to being what we call a safe-ish space, to also being a free-ish space. That is to say, we are not, obviously, we are not behind a paywall, either here on Facebook at what we call the takeout window, or on the formal website, or in what we call the bistro, which is Lace on Race groups. There is no explicit buy-in. That's on purpose in order to live out our North Star, to make sure that people can access this material, that everyone can access the material, we do not make a buy-in. But it is free-ish. And by free-ish, we do mean that we do ask you to consider the fact that one of the things that we talk about and will talk about a lot is the fact that racism and white supremacy are primarily economic constructs. And as we're going to talk about as I read over the written ask from a couple of days ago, it shows up in how spaces are funded. It shows up in the way that white people and people of color and people who are white presenting or white adjacent live out their ethos and their values when it comes to money. We are so used to, and it's not all about race, and I want to make sure that that's part of it, that's heard, but a significant portion of it is, I'd say 90%. You guys thought I was going to say like 50%, but no, it's 90%. We are used to getting things free on Facebook. We are used to getting things free on the internet as a whole, and what we have seen are that other media outlets and other commentators have indeed gone behind paywalls, either Patreon or some other websites that produce content like Medium. Um, and what winds up happening is that only a small cohort of people gets to see the content. That's not great. That's not great. I want to tell you a little bit about my own journey to an ethos of free-ish, even when it's not asked for, in other racial justice spaces, not just Lace on Race. Right now, we fund about 3 websites, and we're looking to fund 3 more. When I use a website extensively, and by that I mean more than once a month, yeah, yeah, I do pony up. It's a big deal, and particularly when it's websites and pages that are owned and administered by people of color. This is a big deal. When it comes to racial justice, some of the most, and if not the most, innovative and creative and truth telling and uncompromising voices are coming from people of color, bar none, and also mainly Black women of color. And that is something that needs to be talked about. That is something that needs to be looked at. So when we're talking about financial engagement, and as you'll see as I read this, it is about lace on race, but not just lace on race. If you'll notice when you go to established websites like Slate, like Salon, like the New York Times, like Washington Post, like the Huffington Post, you will normally see that a lot of the times the go tos for racial justice are not people who look like me. And if there are people who look like me, there's like three or four of them. Those are the ones that get the bandwidth. We're not even going to talk about the Robin DiAngelos or the Tim Wises or the Jane Elliots of the racial justice space, which get all the oxygen, who get all the oxygen, as opposed to the women who I follow and the women who deserve to have their voices heard and amplified. These are the women that are tent makers, that work 8 hours at another job only to come back and write trenchant commentary that other commentators then repackage, usually in a diluted form, all the way to the bank. Nobody has skin in the game when it comes to racial justice like Black women. It cannot be controverted or denied. And that's important. And what also is important is the way that this very imperfect system is administered and how it's sometimes policed. There is nowadays and we're going to talk about it later because I am going to read this whole thing, but I just wanted to give my thoughts right away. There is sort of a now sort of a hierarchy that people who do not ask for funding are somehow more legit than those who don't. Let's look at the numbers and let's look at the realities when it comes to women of color, in particular, Black women in very particular, and racial justice spaces. As I said before, most of them are tent makers. Until 6 months ago, when I retired from the county of San Diego, I was a tent maker, working anywhere from 100 to 120 hours a week as a 56 and later 57-year-old woman. And most of the people who I read and I follow and who I go, oh my gosh, this is brilliant, are also tent makers. That needs to change. And there needs to be not this idea that there should be side eye. Oh my God, they're asking for money. How dare they ask me for money? Well, you're here, you're listening to them, you're reading them. Hopefully, you're getting something out of them that you can inculcate into your own racial justice praxis. And so, is this a better option? You read for free online and then you pick up Robin DiAngelo for $24.95. That's not okay. And increasingly, that's exactly what's happened. Everyone talks about kind of the gateway drugs to racial justice work. And usually it's Robin. Well, she talks in a way that white people can hear. Same with Tim Wise. Same with um, Jane Elliott. The problem with that is that in the same way as perhaps you don't necessarily want a coach or a counselor or a person who is speaking into your life like a spiritual director to be someone who can make sure that you are never ever activated, never ever triggered, never ever challenged because they're just like you. Is that really the right way to go? I'm not sure that it is. At Lace on Race, we do have a very particular ethos and a way of saying things and a way of discourse that some people say is gentle. It isn't. We say some pretty incendiary and provocative things. But what we want to be is effective. I want to get in there, be a bug in your ear that you can't ignore. Same with my staff, same with my leadership team. We are saying things that are simply not said in other spaces. Yesterday, and I talked about it in the ask, I got blocked by a group who was making the distinction between we will never ever ask you for money. That's never going to happen. And those people that do, and they put their Patreon or they put their Venmo down there, well, we'll never do that. The last time I checked, neither Venmo or Patreon was pornography. Let's tell the truth about getting necessary voices heard and honored and respected. Let's talk about me for a minute, and then we're going to slide it on out. The odds are very, very low that I'm going to get column inches in the New York Times or the Washington Post. The odds are incredibly low that I would get column inches in HuffPo, and even if I did, HuffPo tends to pay its contributors either nothing or next to nothing. Unlike us at Lace on Race, who pay fairly and promptly to the people of color who contribute to us. We're going to get back that in a moment. The reason that I founded Lace on Race 3 years ago was because indeed I had something to say, and I knew that using normal channels, I would never be able to say it. Or if by chance I did get column inches, it would have to be run through 3 or 4 different editors. And by the time I finished saying what I had to say and it actually made print, it would be everybody really needs to be nice to each other. Kumbaya. Let's have a potluck. Those of you who know me know that's not what I'm about. And that's not what the women who I follow are about. The women who have done the heavy lifting, not just in terms of intellectual commentary, but also in terms of changing the dialogue in the nation, should indeed be compensated. They should not have to work 60 to 80 hours or 100 or 120 hours a week as they do the job that pays the rent, and then they come and give truth to power. Robin DiAngelo doesn't have to, neither does Tim Wise. We need to talk about, and I did not put this in the ask, but I'm doing it now, and probably I shouldn't because that's an ask, but we're talking about money now, and I am betting that you all have the agency, capacity, and willingness to hear the tough stuff. Even when we are talking about how we fund these spaces, there is always this idea that there is sort of this idea that it's run by bubblegum and good intentions. It isn't. It isn't. We do not hold white spaces, white social justice spaces to the same scrutiny that we hold men and women, and particularly women of color, and particularly Black women. To even suggest, that our voices are less legitimate, that our commentary is less trenchant, that our words are less true because we ask for compensation is white supremacy straight up. Straight up. You can't get past it. And the women that I follow, the women who I try to emulate, will not be in the Washington Post or the New York Times either. So when these women, when they're done with their websites and their own Facebook pages and maybe their Patreon pages, when they go on to other pages, and not just people who you would consider formal intellectuals or thinkers or commentators do it, and I've seen it. I've seen Black women swarm a post, making sure that that doesn't go sideways, and that the problematic statements made by white people and white presenting people are given a counterbalance and a counterweight. And 3 hours later, when not only that individual, who may or may not be changed, it's a crapshoot, but also the entire Coliseum who's listening in, and they say, and someone says, you should drop your Patreon. And then they do. And then maybe 5 people give them $5. We really need to take a good and a hard look at the dynamics of that. There is no way you can have a consistent racial justice praxis without looking at the money angle. Okay, I'm done with this preface. And if I have any of you left, I'm going to read the mid-April ask because I queued it up, darn it, and I'm going to read it. This is what I said a couple of days ago, and I'll put my finger up like this just in case I have something um, to say other than what I wrote. The ask is indeed on all platforms. It's on the website, it's in the bistro, it's on the Facebook page. And for those of you who have read it and commented on it, I thank you. It is indeed required reading, not just for those of you who have decided, the 2% of you on a good month who have decided to financially partner with Lace on Race, but it's also for each and every one of you to confront. I'll say it again. It's also for each and every one of you to confront how we live out our financial lives is part of our racial justice praxis. That's true for every one of you watching me right now. That's true whether or not you identify as white presenting a person of color or a Black person. It is equally important for me as a Black woman to support and to amplify the voices and the organizations and the individuals that are doing amazing work. And never forget, who are laying the groundwork for policy and legislation, both in private industry and in government. The things that you see in your workplace, the things that Biden was talking about on the campaign trail, those were variants. Let's just put it that way. Those were variants of the work of untold and unseen Black women who changed, literally changed the conversation over the last 5 years, and are still working 40-hour jobs when they can get work. I wonder what color Robin DiAngelo's Beamer is as she repackages the work of those women. I'm very fortunate in that Lace on Race has had the reach and the influence to be able to allow me to make this my only vocation. It's a big deal. It's a scary deal because every month I have to basically sing for my supper. And since I retired, we have not made budget in any given month. We simply have not. There have been some reasons for it, but I don't think that it's a coincidence that in September we made budget and October going forward, we haven't. We have to look at that. And there are some posts up that talk about that talk about the idea that if all 10,000 of you contributed to Lace on Race. It's like, well, where does it go? Well, those community partners, but what about that? It's like, well, yeah, thank you. Yes, it allows me to buy frozen peas. It allows me, as a 57-year-old woman, not to work 120-hour weeks. And I would think you wouldn't want me to do that. But as we pan out from my particular circumstance to the other women, intellectuals and thinkers and commentators that you consume on the daily, do you want to live well? Not extravagantly, not profligately, modestly, but well. Is that something you want us to be able to do, even as we inform you, even as we enlighten you, even as we galvanize you, hopefully, towards action? The short answer seems to be no, and that needs to be confronted hard 5 years later, since a significant portion of you decided that you all were going to care about racial justice. But if racial justice is primarily an economic issue, if racism and white supremacy are primarily economic constructs, and they are, what does that say when we talk about the balance of economic power, not just social capital, although that's a big piece of it too? When we talk about and confront the hard truth that 5 years later, after 2016 and that ill-fated election, that there has been no real change, that the go-tos are still white people. White people and white presenting people have not only morphed some of the terms of racial justice, they also set the terms for what racial justice looks like and what is and is not accepted in customary practice. That needs to change. We are a boutique organization. If the other larger spaces that have hundreds of thousands of followers and people who like and subscribers are the Safeway and the Ralphs and the Albertsons of the world. We're a little bitty, teeny tiny little corner market in Spring Valley, California, which is a really good market. It's on Campo Road. You got to go. Valley Farms. Love it. They're within our ethos. Go for it. And they make a really good pot pie. But that's who we are. That's who we are. But let me tell you, Valley Farm sets the standard for what quality grocery stores look like in East County, San Diego. That is why when another fairly larger chain opened up a few miles away, you could feel the fragrance of Valley Farms invading that store. That's a good thing. And that's what we do here. What we say a lot is that we teach teachers, we mentor mentors, we influence influencers. So as long as I've got a few of you, I don't need 500,000. As long as I've got a few of you getting it in and then taking it outside, I'm good. But we need to be able to continue to do that. The need is incredibly great. One of the things that we are never ever going to give on is our community partners that we fund from first fruits. Sometimes, in the case of Bertie Gutierrez here in San Diego County, sometimes we do an April community partner disbursement before April because Bertie needed it. No, we did not come anywhere close to meeting goals in March, and we're not going to. I hope that's wrong. I hope that's wrong. We probably are not going to in April either, but the first fruits still stand. The Lace on Race Mental and Emotional Health Fund still stands. And as I'm going to, I'm going to read this. I promise I'm going to read it. I found it. I queued it up. And for the ex intern who experienced hardship, there was absolutely no question that we would walk with her from a distance, but that we would walk with her. And we walked with her tangibly via first fruits this week. There was no question that it would happen. That is what Hesed is about. That is what unilateralism is about. And I realize that there are questions about that action. I've seen some of the commentary, and I will address all of it. But Hesed stands. Unilateralism stands. Our promise to that individual was never voided. And as we learn what that looks like, walking in love and Hesed, even when we are harmed, makes all the difference in our praxis. We are not always, it's not always going to be easy. It's easy when it's easy. It's when there is relational fissure, when there is a relational tear, that we have to confront ourselves, look straight in the eye in the mirror, and decide who we're going to be in the wake of that. And particularly when we're talking about internal work and racial justice, whichever side of the slash you find yourself on, that cannot be forgotten and it cannot be set aside. So let me read this. It's good. I think you should hear it. This is what I said a couple of days ago. This is the umpteenth time I have attempted to draft the April mid-month ask. That's true. Took me forever. It's always a hard thing to write, and there's always a reason that I feel less than comfortable. Pick your reasons in any given month or period. This time it's Holly and the continuing fallout from that, which has affected us in very personal ways, although we have tried very hard not to let it affect us in terms of program and in terms of content and in terms of the quality that we give you. And now this week, having to confront the optics of doing a funding appeal, which we do at least twice a month if I can get up the gumption and have the stomach for it, during a fraught time in our collective psyches, a truncated accountability in Minneapolis, and being able to be with you all as I live blogged. And even and including the same day that verdict was rendered, another killing of a Black person, and then another, and then yet another just yesterday. All of this indeed has a chilling effect, an inhibiting effect that serves to freeze my fingers. But this work is needed directly because of the very events that make it so hard to reference for an ask. So I hesitate. I do. I write drafts. I discard drafts. I go walk down my street. I come back. I wring my hands. I pace on my porch. Never more so than this week. But then, but then this happened yesterday. Like I was telling you earlier, there's this organization where I was, until yesterday, kind of an intermittent lurker for reasons that you're going to hear about, delivered what I felt was a direct shot across the bow to people who educate white people, either formally, like here in this space of Lace on Race, or informally, where untold Black and Brown people give their time as well as their intellectual and academic capital to the service of education in service to their people, yes, but which is also, and sometimes ultimately, for the enrichment and, dare I say, the aggrandizement of white people. Oh, here's an update. I was removed and blocked. It's fun being Mordecai at the gate. But that does leave me with some overarching thoughts of my own. Black and brown people should absolutely be paid for their services, like I talked about earlier. We pay contributors here at Lace on Race, and that should be true everywhere, even and particularly when Black and brown people invest of themselves in groups and in pages. That labor is no less legitimate than if one owns or has power or influence in any given space, online or offline. This should be a given. I think of the last 5 years when significant amounts of white and white presenting people became interested, but not invested. And I use the word invested with intent. And the immense amount of free labor that has been consumed, with arguably little change in behavior and certainly no change in the economic dynamics between white and non-white cohorts. These absolutely imperfect systems that have become more or less accepted practice is in response to that. People giving untold hours to problematic people in groups and websites and pages, educating not just the individual itself, like I said earlier, but also to the hordes of folk listening in from the cheap seats. They sometimes drop their PayPal or their Venmo. I'm going on record in reiterating that that is an absolutely legitimate practice. They need to be seen and acknowledged. And within this imperfect system, this is one very imperfect way to do so. And within formal spaces like this one, there absolutely should be no demonization or hierarchy between those who do not ask for financial engagement against those who do. It is the rare person who can devote significant time, their intellect, their accumulated knowledge and experience pro bono. And they shouldn't have to. But see, even beyond that, there is the overarching principle that we talk about a lot, that racism and white supremacy are absolutely economic constructs. I'll say it again for anybody who's new and is not used to me flapping my jaws. Racism and white supremacy are absolutely economic constructs. It's a system, both individual and systemic, meant absolutely to aggrandize one cohort at the absolute expense of the other. And this is seen in sharp relief, like we were talking about earlier, in racial justice spaces. That this is true, and it is true, That this is true speaks to the insidiousness and the pervasiveness of white supremacy itself, even when it is, at least on the surface, fighting the very thing it says it's fighting, but it's actually upholding the very thing it says it's challenging and confronting. This ask, this incredibly long winded ask, speaks to that. It speaks to the fact that white people and the BIPOC, who sometimes enable them, absolutely drive the racial justice space and makes for a dynamic that I have to slog through like so much rancid molasses every single time I do an ask. I want you to hear this plainly. It is deeply incongruous to celebrate and affirm and amplify Black and Brown voices, be it in video or in print or any place else, online or offline, without fair compensation. Anything less, I'll put my finger up because this is more commentary, anything less is plantation mentality. I said what I said. Our focus on money here is not only for the benefit of Lace on Race, although we absolutely do believe that this free-ish space, like we talked about earlier, that this free-ish space should be supported and that our Western star should be honored. It is also for others in the racial justice sector as a whole. Here's a truth. People who financially engage here are far more likely to engage in other spaces. I want you to hear that again. If you're engaging here, the odds are high that you also engage in other spaces. If you are not engaging here, the odds are low that you are. I would actually be way more okay with the 9,800 of you who do not financially engage with Lace on Race if you are financially engaging in other spaces. But we all know that the odds are way less than even that you are anywhere, anywhere. This is a big deal. This is one reason why we conceived of and administer the Community Partner Fund, because while we are talking about the economics of racial justice spaces, we also are making sure that we know that it's not just about us. That is where as much as 33% in any given month, not 1%, like I've seen other people crow about. We give 1% of our net profits to charity or to social justice work. Really? 1% of your net profits. Wow, that is a bunch of lawyer speak. We don't. We don't do that. Well, for one thing, we're not that smart. 33% off the top. First fruits. We believe that other groups and individuals should be seen and tangibly honored. And while we're talking about the Black women in social justice spaces that give of their time and their expertise for free, and then have white people give them side eye when they dare to ask to be compensated in the imperfect way of Venmo and Patreon and PayPal, we believe that organizations and individuals doing the work outside that will never be featured again in the New York Times or the Washington Post or the Baltimore Sun or San Diego Union Tribune or the San Francisco Chronicle, they need to be seen too. So this month, there is an Asian Pacific Islander group in San Diego who was doing COVID drop-ins in addition to a food distribution right in my old neighborhood, Paradise Hills and National City. It's amazing. While they also hit hard on policy and legislation. Boom, that's how it's done. I chomped at the bit to partner with them. Thank you, Joanne. And thank you, Joy, an educator who is neurodiverse herself, who is dedicating herself to Black adults and children on the autism spectrum. That's crazy. I'll talk about it later. I just get excited. I get ahead of myself. We created the Lace on Race Mental and Emotional Health Fund for respect and, crucially, for respite to these Black women on whose backs the racial justice movement has rested. So that they can get their Manny, so that they can get a nice bottle of wine, so that maybe, depending on where they are, they can rent a hotel room and just breathe in a deep tub for one night while they get the respite from working a full time job and doing the work that they are called to do, either formally or not. We make sure that Black and Brown contributors don't have to drop their PayPal links when they grace us with their knowledge and their expertise because we pay them promptly and fairly out of our first fruits. And we make sure that Black and Brown people don't have to do the heavy lifting for either me or for my staff or for my leadership team, because training is we do not abdicate when we write something incendiary. Rather than that, we swarm it. We swarm it so that no one has to do our jobs for us while we abdicate and look on from the sidelines. All of this is done in service to North Star ethos and values. I've already talked about the two amazing organizations that we are partnering with this month. And by the way, we've already dispersed to First Fruits. First Fruits. We're not waiting to see if the community comes through. We come through first. If we hit our goal, then whatever money is over and above our goal gets dispersed to those groups. We know what we need. No one's out there buying a Lamborghini. We know what we need. And we know that if we are fortunate enough to make our budget, that we make our budget and then we give the excess away. That's the way it should be done. Not 1% of net profits. I'm sorry. I just can't. I just can't. And here's the part that, like I said earlier, might make for some questioning. This month, we also financially engaged with a former community member who was also, until February, on our leadership team. I mentioned her above. She is enduring hardship. And while she broke communion and abiding with us, both individually and collectively as part of this community, still our praxis and our commitment to her stays extant. And yes, we're going to talk about that because it is something that has to be marrow deep. If you are going to enter into a relationship that means something, whether or not they endure, you still endure. That's already been funded, like I said before. It's done, regardless of what the community does or does not do. It's how we roll. I am sure that there's going to be queries about that, and I am here for it. I might eat a vegetarian corn dog first, but trust me when I tell you, I am still here for it. Because here's the crucial piece. Here's the crucial piece, you guys. You need to remember. And I know this has nothing to do with the ask, but it has everything to do with the ask, with what I am trying to inculcate in you and get it in. Unilateralism holds, both in your personal lives and in your racial justice life. It holds firmly. There was absolutely no question among my staff, myself, my leadership team that we would respond with our normal and customary HESED. When it's marrow deep, you don't have to sit there scratching your head wondering what to do. HESED is never voided. Can I say that again, just in case anybody was grabbing a snack? HESED is never voided. So, guess what? We're at the end. Phew! This is the mid-April ask. Currently, I have not checked in a couple of days since I did the written ask, but at the time of this writing, we were at a bit less than half of our monthly goal, even as we have fulfilled our commitments to our community partners and to our former community member with whom we still walk, albeit at a distance, but walk we will. Sustainers and sustainers in training. If you have not yet fulfilled your internal commitment, we do ask that you do so. If you did not fulfill it in February or March, we ask that you take a considered look at that as well. Those in the bistro, same thing. For those of you who financially engage with us a la carte, you have not made a formal commitment. This is also your opportunity. For those of you who would like to become sustainers, who would like to participate in the bistro, and eventually who would like to become chef's table, the instructions are all over the place. I'll make sure that they are at the bottom of this video as well. But if you want to engage a la carte, this is also your opportunity to continue um, to make sure that this space continues, that we are honoring our Western Star, the sustainability and health and longevity of this space that I do, as arrogant as it sounds, that I do feel is deeply needed. And also in alignment with and adherence to our North Star, lessening and mitigating the harm endured by Black and Brown people, perpetuated by white people and white supremacy. There were some of you guys who were going, she hadn't said it yet. Of course, I'm going to say it. I am contractually obligated to give our North Star every single video, and you better believe I'm going to do it. And a word to these new people, all of you, and thank you, who have graced us this month, who have come from other pages and websites, who have seen me either speak or write. Welcome. The guidelines give our position on financial engagement over and above what I said in this video, our commitment to a free-ish space as well as a safe-ish space, and our affirmation that financial engagement here and in other offline and online spaces is a non-negotiable, an absolute non-negotiable part of your overall racial justice practice as you opt in to this space. I cannot compel you to financially engage with Lace on Race, but if you are here ready to do the work, know that part of the work, this is something you can't just kind of do a workaround or try to get an exception to or carve out from. If you are going to confront and challenge racism and white supremacy, your financial life has got to be a part of it, both within and without this space. If you like what you heard and you want to hear more, like or follow or subscribe, depending on whichever platform you are on, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, our website, and at the bistro. You can subscribe to make sure that you get all of the posts in the bistro, and you can also subscribe to make sure that you get all the posts on the website. Like and share. I'm going to be giving a housekeeping video either tonight or tomorrow that talks about what you can do, what your responsibilities are as a community member. I'll be aiming it at new folks, but it's also not bad for people who are more seasoned to hear this too. And we are going to continue with cowardice and courage and fear and commitment so that we can be ready, so that we can have the tools in place when we talk about 5 winning strategies, 5 losing strategies. There's so much to do, and I want to do it with all of you. I want to be here sitting, if not in this chair, because it's not a really comfortable chair. Let's just tell the truth about it. If not in this chair, another chair, but I will be with you. In all seriousness, I thank you for allowing me and my staff and my leadership team here at the Lace on Race Center for Racial Equity. Thank you for allowing us to give you all our very, very best. In Hesed love, I will always be your lace.